Senator Marco Rubio joins us. Senator, welcome back to the Pensacola Morning News, sir.
Thank you. Good morning, Andrew.
Hey, great to have you. So obviously you have been spending a lot of time recently on the gun issue. You just this morning sent out a note that you support President Trump's support of the initiatives that you have been offering. Let's start with the Stop School Violence Act, these restraining orders on people who are deemed to be in danger. The big concern that people have, of course, is about due process. Tell me a little bit about this initiative and what's being done to protect them.
Well, two separate things. Stop School Violence is not restraining orders. Stop School Violence is basically federal funding, and the Senate built $75 million in the first year, $100 million for the next 9 years after that. And basically it's designed to do what didn't happen in Parkland, and that is for schools and law enforcement and others to work together to identify students or anybody who has problems and is a potential danger to themselves or to schools or to a sporting event or anything for that matter. So the one thing all these shootings have in common is that the killer either tells someone this is what they're going to do or acts in strange ways for a significant period of time. People are noticing it. But sometimes it's different people, and they don't ever have a chance to compare notes with each other. So what this does is it provides a federal incentive for states and school districts to create these task force where they sit down and different agencies like a sheriff's office, the police department, the school, the counselors, everybody compares notes about individuals and realizes we got a problem. And then you can jump on that person and provide them services, make sure they're not buying guns, et cetera. In essence, we are trying to identify shooters and stop them before they even buy a gun and or step foot on a school, well before they get to that point. The gun violence restraining orders, I have filed a bill with Senator Nelson. It's bipartisan. And what it does is just creates federal grant program to encourage states to adopt their own gun violence restraining orders. And there is due process. It's like a restraining order would be for anything else. You have to go before a court. You have to prove probable cause to get a temporary restraining order, and that keeps someone from buying a gun. And then you have to go back within a short period of days, 14 days, 10 days, and prove with clear and convincing evidence that that person is a danger. And you've got to obviously prove it before a judge. You've got to present evidence, et cetera. And what the president's calling for, and we support, is for more states to adopt these sort of measures, because if you end up identifying someone as a potential shooter, you want to make sure that they're not able to buy a gun. So basically, we are focused on killer control, not gun control, because ultimately the real problem is not what they're using to kill people, but the fact that there's somebody out there that wants to kill people. We got to find them, and we got to stop them from getting their hands on something that could kill people. It could be a rifle, a handgun, a bomb, whatever.
Yeah, it seems like there's all kinds of ways you could slice, for example, the Parkland assailant, and you could look at him as an under 21 and stop under 21s. You could look at him as Hispanic and try to stop Hispanics from owning guns, or as this bill tends to do, and what it seems to make a lot more sense, you could look at him as somebody who's mentally disturbed, and let's prevent those people from having access to guns, right?
Yeah, I mean, the central problem here is even if you confiscated every gun in America, which no one is proposing, obviously, and it would be unconstitutional, but even if you did, you still have a major problem, and that is you have potentially hundreds, if not thousands, of individuals who want to kill people, and we got to find who they are to the best we can, and we have to stop them. It's kind of how we prevent terrorism. TSA and security at different places, that's our last line of defense. But our first line of defense is the FBI and the CIA and our intelligence work and local law enforcement that is trying to find who the terrorists are and stop them before they make a bomb or get in a car and run over a bunch of people in Times Square. And that's how we prevent terrorist attacks. We try to prevent them before we try to stop them.
There's been a lot of stuff going on in your wheelhouse, which is international affairs. The foremost thing that people are talking about right now is obviously the possibility of a meeting with North Korea, between President Trump and the head of North Korea. Elizabeth Warren yesterday said something interesting. She says she thinks Trump is going to get taken advantage of. Are you concerned about that? What's your take on this potential meeting between them for the first time?
Well, I don't know about taking advantage. I mean, people say these things, lightly. I have concerns about it because this is a guy, first of all, I just want to back up. You have to put yourself in his shoes in order to understand what he's trying to do, right? So what is Kim Jong-un trying to do? He's trying to not be Saddam Hussein. He's trying to not be Gaddafi. He doesn't want to wind up, in jail. He doesn't want to wind up, captured and taken out of power. And he has decided that the way to do that is to be a nuclear power. If he has nuclear weapons, if he can threaten America with nuclear weapons, it's in an ultimate insurance policy. No one can come after him. He now obviously either two things are happening. Either one, He is under a lot of pressure internally from elites because life in North Korea has gotten very difficult. These people are no longer have as much money as they used to in terms of the people that are around him. And so he feels pressure to try to at least create the hope that things might get better by easing sanctions. Or B, he now feels confident enough that he's on equal footing with the U.S. because he's proven he can launch these missiles, and he can now go into a negotiation and either get recognition as a nuclear power or be able to go to the world and say, look, I'm a reasonable guy. I tried to meet with Trump. I tried to negotiate with the United States, but they were completely unreasonable. And he would do that to undermine international sanctions and basically isolate us as opposed to the other way around. I think the second scenario that I just pointed out, which is he's either going to try to be recognized as a nuclear power or he's going to argue that America is, the unreasonable ones. I think that is the likelier scenario here, and that's why I do think we need to tread very, very carefully going into this.
So that's not taking advantage of, but that is that his goal in this seems to be very different and the opposite of what, say, President Trump's goal is, which is, that's an interesting analysis that he's obviously trying to get something out of it very contrary to what we want. One of the other things that's happened recently, I know you watch everything that's going on with Russia very closely. Are you concerned about their rhetoric lately, and particularly about these supposed tests, the video that came out just the other day about the test of this hypersonic missile or whatever? Are we entering a whole new phase of a Cold War, or where do you think we're at with Russia?
Well, I think you have to view all that, again, through the lens of Vladimir Putin. Vladimir Putin is, quote-unquote, running for re-election. He's not going to lose. But in order for him to say that this was a legitimate election, he needs high turnout, right? Because if you have 10% turnout or 20% turnout, the elections look, not real, even though they're not real. So he wants there to be high turnout. So how does he generate high turnout in Russia? He generates high turnout by going to the Russian people, many of whom feel as if the world has mistreated them for 25 years, and saying, I am a strong leader, I have made Russia relevant again, and I am fighting for you against these outside aggressors who are doing bad things to our country. And so when you put up these missiles, when you do an interview with Megyn Kelly on NBC News where he's arguing with an American network about, interfering in the election and the like, he is projecting the image of a strong Russian leader who has made Russia great again, who has positioned Russia as relevant in the global stage, and who is taking on these outside forces, particularly America, that seeks to contain Russia and humiliate Russia. And he does that because now, people are excited about coming out and voting for him, and he controls all the media in Russia. So that's really what that is all about. My experience has been that when you have these sort of special missiles and weapon systems, you don't generally do a press conference about them. You just let them stand because the intelligence agencies of all these countries know each other's capabilities. It strikes me a lot more as a internal domestic production on his part in order to project an image of strength internally in Russia leading up to these elections.
Are you saying Vladimir Putin would engage in a PR stunt? Sir, come on.
Look, that's what in many ways he was an expert at for years, working in the KGB in East Germany. He was an influence guy, and that's a lot of what he's done. That's his background.
Right. We're talking to Senator Marco Rubio. It's a little bit different format for us. We'll get traffic on the fives after we get done with the interview. Senator, obviously the trade tariffs, the possible tariffs between us and other countries, whether or not between Mexico and Canada with regards to the NAFTA negotiations, steel and aluminum, this is what he campaigned on, but do you think it is going to have the negative effects the naysayers are offering, or do you think this is just more leverage in negotiation?
It could have a negative effect. It could have a positive effect. It really depends how it plays out. I think it's important to step back and realize that free trade is not the goal. The goal is to help the American economy and the American workers. Free trade is good to the extent that it leads to that result. Our obligation is not to the theory of free trade. Our obligations are to the reality that American families need jobs to provide for themselves and their children and their future. So I'm a supporter of free trade because I think on its sum, it's a positive thing for the country, but that depends on two things. One, that we're competitive, that we have the ability internally to compete with the right training, with the tax code and regulations that don't put us in an unfair advantage. And the other is that the people we're trading with are following the rules because we set up rules for this trade, and they have to follow the rules, and we have to follow the rules. And so I'm a supporter of free trade so long as and the rules have to be enforced. So when it comes to steel and aluminum, there's been some cheating involved there and the like, and unfortunately it pits us right now against allies in Europe and Canada and in Mexico, and I think that'll work its way through. I think the bigger problem in trade goes well beyond aluminum and steel is with China, and China, they are serial cheaters on every front. I mean, they steal intellectual property, they re-engineer American products illegally. They are buying up smaller American companies and the components, particularly in technology. And we in this country have to do a better job of vocational and skills training. There are a lot of manufacturing jobs that are available for the American worker, but we haven't done a good job in this country of training people to do that work, because we want everyone to go to a 4-year college and get a degree in social sciences or whatever, which is fine, but we also need welders, plumbers, electricians, and people to work in these factories. And we got to do a better job of training people to do that and provide more opportunities for it.
Last thing, Senator Marco Rubio, before we let you go, it's more of I just wanted to give you credit. I don't think you have gotten nearly enough credit for this. The tax cut that President Trump signed into effect, for the longest time I was doing the analysis on this, and it was going to cost people like me money and other people with kids money. You came in and forced the child tax credit to be maintained and increased, and only because of that has it been a tax cut for me and my family. So for that, sir, I just wanted to say thank you, because I appreciated that work on your part.
Well, I'm a father of 4, so I guess I was a little selfish in that regard. But I really also think that it is important, if we're going to be a pro-family, if the Republican Party is going to be pro-family, and if the country is going to recognize that no matter how much they make, a family of 6 has higher expenses than a family of 3. So we're not punishing the family of 3, but we are recognizing that when you spend money on your kids to go to school, on their school material, and whatever it might be, you're investing in a future American worker, in a future American taxpayer, in a future American leader. So if the average family was a corporation and you're investing money in an asset like that, you get to write that off on your taxes. But if an American family is investing in our future everything, the tax code didn't take that into account. And so not only did we expand the child tax credit to $2,000, we expanded the amount of it that was refundable, meaning the amount that was applicable against payroll tax, because for millions and millions of working Americans, their primary tax that they pay is the payroll tax, not the income tax. It's still a tax, and it didn't apply towards that far enough. So that's going to help millions of people next year when they file their taxes. They're going to see they're going to keep more money, and that's a very positive thing.
It is a very good thing. Senator Rubio, thank you so much for the time this morning. We really appreciate it.
Thank you. It's still dark outside. It's time change.
That's right. That's right.
All right. Thank you.
That's right.
All right. Thank you.
That's right.